This segment brought to you by Kansas Corn. Learn more at kscorn.com.
And just bringing this all together in this whole nutrition and greenhouse gas emission issue and this whole idea of upcycling, this is a really interesting study that came out in the fall of 2017 that was published in the Proceedings of the National Academies of Sciences. And essentially, two animal scientists looked at this whole idea that is out there, right, of Meatless Mondays, right, or less meat, less heat. They put it to the most extreme test. They said, what if we could reduce meat consumption completely to zero, right? What if we had no livestock and every American, including, oh, by the way, the 140 million cats and dogs that are in America, are also now all vegans, right? Everybody has to eat a plant-based diet. What would actually happen with greenhouse gas emissions, okay? So you can see the headline at the top there, right? We would reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 2.6%, okay, in the United States. And I put in parentheses what that is globally, okay, what it's equivalent to globally. So less than 0.5%. We would produce more pounds of food. We would produce more calories, but we wouldn't have enough essential micronutrients to actually nourish everybody in our food supply if we had no animals, right? And of course, a big one there is vitamin B12. There is no vitamin B12 without animal source foods. And that's really important for cognition, right, for memory, right? So we'd have really overfed people that would have mental issues. So it could be a problem. But we would reduce greenhouse gas emissions, right? So that's all that matters. So that's super important. The other thing that's going on the screen in terms of this bar chart is why this paper, I think, is really good, is because it looked at some of those unintended consequences. What if you get rid of livestock? What actually happens, okay, with greenhouse gas emissions? So looking at this bar chart, the plus animals is our current situation, right? And if you can't see the scale, the main thing to look at is that big blue chunk are the greenhouse gas emissions that come from animal agriculture. And then the minus animal situation is this vegan scenario, right, where we get rid of all livestock. And the key takeaway here is you don't just remove those emissions from animals, right? You're going to have to add back some things that you're not accounting for. Like if we have no animals, we have no animal manure. Right, so we're going to have to rely a lot more on synthetic fertilizer. We're going to have to rely more on legumes, both for our own nutrition in terms of protein, but also adding back more nitrogen in our soils, right? And this is just greenhouse gas emissions. This isn't looking at all the ripple effects that would happen probably with grassland conditions and with soil erosion, right? All those other problems that we would probably have. And then finally, the last thing I'll just say on this is this assumes all livestock would disappear, right? So the cows cannot go to a petting sanctuary, right, where everybody's going to pet them 3 times a day, right, because then they'll still be belching out methane, right? So this is super important, right? We have to have one last giant barbecue, and then that's it, okay? So that's super important, again, because if we're talking about some of these scenarios of Meatless Mondays or one person reducing their meat consumption to do right by the environment. I don't want to be a Debbie Downer to them, but if you don't eat beef, most likely somebody else is going to eat that beef you were going to eat, right? All the emissions happened a couple of years before, and you as an individual cannot change the entire U.S. beef supply chain or the global beef supply chain, right? Even if you are an important person, right? That's just not how it works. So this is really important from a standpoint of talking about these environmental scenarios, is oftentimes they ignore all these indirect effects and unintended consequences.
Kim Mannering with Hardy Insurance. Today we will talk about umbrella coverage. Did you know that if your cattle get out, you could be held liable for that? Call me. Let's have a discussion. 316-945-6733.